I'm Alexandra, founder of Recfindr, and today I've asked Nina to come and join me to talk a bit about recruitment and the story of Bloom Money. So, Nina, thank you so much for coming here today and joining me on the couch.
Thank you for having me on this very lovely sofa.
Nina.
Alex.
In the past few years of knowing you, I've never actually asked you about Bloom Money in terms of its origin. How did you come up with it?
Yes, great question. The origin story of Bloom is not a villain story, hopefully. It is hopefully a heroine story, as in heroine with an E.
Good.
Yeah. Where do we start? I guess we have to go back to the fact. So, I was born and raised in the Silicon Valley. And naturally, because of that, I despised tech, did not want to work in tech, and wanted to run away from tech as fast as I could.
Which is the opposite reaction I thought most people would have being in
Correct. My parents were early .com boom engineers, and so when you're surrounded by it, you just kind of think, let me get out of this. So I worked in the Foreign Commercial Service, I worked for the US government, and then fell into fintech at a certain point because I found that working in government was a bit slower than I would like.
The red tape?
Yeah, the red tape. And so went and did a master's degree, and during that time fell into the world of fintech. Working at MasterCard, then helped launch the Starling Bank current account, worked at the open banking platform Bud, was at Klarna.
Oh, damn. You really did a 180, though, because you went from like the red tapiest of tapes to the most chaotic.
Well, actually, the way I look at it is I went from like US government, which is the most bureaucratic and like you know, hundreds of thousands of workers around the world, then to MasterCard, which is like,
oh, so you kind of,
I've been narrowing the funnel, you know, MasterCard, multinational corporation, then Starling as employee like 130, 135,
Okay.
then Bud, employee 12, first woman on the team.
Damn.
Then Klarna, back up to kind of like high growth stage, few thousand employees, I think less than 2,000 at the time. But one of the first, I guess, US team members, and then Bloom. And as a child of two immigrants, so my father's Indian, my mother is Taiwanese, I've always been very interested in the intersection of migration and financial services. I know that your parents have an immigrant background as well. And just was really frustrated with many things. One, we're working in fintech. We're building really cool shit every day. Why are we building the same stuff for the same people all the time?
I didn't want to say it, but it's so true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were just giggling about dating apps. It's like, oh, let me just reskin this in a different thing. And it's the same core product oftentimes. The second thing was when it comes to immigrant communities, most of the innovation has been in remittances. So how do we send money home?
Yeah.
How do we send it faster, cheaper, more payout options, which of course is great. If you come from an immigrant background, you understand how important that is. But actually, remittances only make up 20% of the purchasing power of immigrants, which means that we're leaving 80% of their purchasing power, of their wallets, on the table.
Yeah.
And no one is building for that. Which seemed quite silly to me. Why not serve immigrants? And then on top of that, I had this realization that actually immigration into Europe is growing at this rapid pace that no one really wants to talk about. Well, they do want to talk about it, but they want to talk about it in the negative way.
Yeah.
And people don't want to talk about the fact that actually, if we want really high growth tech sectors, we need immigration. If we want care work, if we want doctors and nurses, we need immigration. If we want people to pick strawberries for our PIMS and our strawberries and cream, we need immigrants.
Yeah.
We need people to drive, you know, the lorries that bring us all of our tat. You know?
That's true.
And so who is going to do it? And the unspoken thing across Europe is actually immigration is legally increasing from non-European countries. But it's easier to kind of have this rhetoric around like, oh, immigrants are like bogging us down, you know, leeching off the welfare system, etc. But really, actually, a majority of immigrants coming into Europe are earning well, have money, and no one is helping them move that money or invest it or save it or
They
help
usually
it
just
grow.
send it back home.
Exactly.
Like that, we have a lot of family members who came here, and then that's basically what they did. They would work here, but then just use that money there.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, and that would be it.
Go buy yourself a nice house back home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, your pound is going to go much further back home. And my dad did exactly that. He built a house for his parents, and all his siblings live in that house now, now that my grandparents have passed. There's a house there. I was just in India a few weeks ago, went to see it. Lovely. My two cousins have, gone to great schools and gone on to IIT, which is like the MIT of India. Even harder to get into because there's more people. And they're, both through IIT. One's in IIT right now. And my dad paid for their tuition. And it's kind of like we send so much money home, but actually no one was building for my dad.
Yeah. There's a lack of education around it, though, whether it's a language barrier, whether it's something like, how can you access that information and say, hey, you can actually do something with your money here to
Correct.
make it go further. But not that I can put myself in my parents' shoes, but all they thought of, oh, Romania is what I know. My family is all there. Like, how do you cross that barrier, whether it's language or whether it's education? I feel like that's the main one of the blockers.
I think the other thing that's really interesting is with immigrant communities, because you are the outsider, you naturally have an affinity with other folks from your own community.
Yeah.
Right? Even if you're like your parents are Romanian, like I'm sure you have the same north-south divide, but actually when you're in the UK, you're all Romanian. So that's all that matters. And even I go to my local, I call her auntie, Mangala auntie, shout out, Lehigh Road, Satya Market. She's Sri Lankan, but I buy all my spices from her. And she thinks of me as like, her little cousin, sister, niece type person because I am half Indian and basically we're the same, right? And like, we buy the same spices. Our food is similar. And so she considers me part of her community as well. And so there's something really interesting to be capitalized upon when you're far from home and you have this community that's really close-knit, where you trust each other, and you want to do things communally. It's actually quite contrary to like the Western world in which we live, which is I have a bank account with Barclays and it's a one-on-one relationship. I actually don't have a bank account with Barclays. I just want that on the record. I have a bank account with Starling, and my relationship is with the bank only. Whereas in immigrant communities, there's a lot more of a communal approach to money.
And you mentioned the word community like twice there, but it's community that's going to get you past the language barrier and the education piece, because they all talk about it together. If someone doesn't understand, they'll be like, oh, I'll come and explain it to you, or this or that. And that's something that I find even with some of my English friends, I don't know how to explain that aspect of community. Like we've got family friends that have been family friends, but they're my aunt.
Yes, no, of course, they're like auntie, of course.
Yeah, they're auntie.
Yeah, and a pin in that one actually. That there's also the danger when you have a very insular community for misinformation, disinformation, scams, fraud, etc. Which in context of fintech is very interesting. It's also very interesting for positive things, like if they love something. Romanians famously, if they love something, they will tell others about it. Filipinos are very similar in that way.
You don't shut up.
But there's something interesting there where no one's actually building for that, and no one is creating the safeguards for communities where perhaps they might be more vulnerable to fraud, scams, etc. But we can talk about that later.
That's such a clever angle. That's a very, very cool angle. Let's go to the next question. Recfindr, of course, we're going to talk about some recruitment.
Yeah, love
Your
it.
favorite topic.
Love it.
Who is the first person that you hired, and how did it happen?
Actually, our first ever hire was our CTO, Dan. Dan and I worked together at Bud.
So you stole him.
I did not steal him. I did not steal him. Well, okay, so there's two Dans, and they were hired one after the other. So Dan James is our CTO. He's brilliant. We worked together at Bud, and I spent months, like truly months, the most manipulative I've ever been in my life. I've never been this manipulative, even in like a romantic relationship, like trying to get a guy to text you back. No, I was playing the long game with Dan, and I was just like incepting him. Like I'd be like, oh hey, like been working on this thing. Can I get your feedback? And then I was kind of like breadcrumbing him, like just like, how do I get him to just
get him involved.
I was like, I've been thinking about like the tech architecture like this. What do you think? And he's like, oh yeah, I'll have a look. Have some free time. And then there was a certain tipping point where, you know, it was a Tuesday and be like, right, I've been working on this for the past 3 days. I can't stop thinking about it. Here's an idea. And I'm like,
You got under his skin.
I got him.
Yeah, you did.
I got him. What's that line from Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter? She's like, when they act this way, I know I got him.
Oh, yeah. I was just like, I can't relate to desperation.
No,
Said no recruiter ever.
Yeah. God, honestly. No, but in it, she's like, when they act this way, I know I got them.
Yeah.
And it was when he was like texting me and going, so I've been spending the weekend thinking about this. Or he'd be like, hey, I just drew a quick diagram. What do you think? And I was like, got him. Played a long game.
Worth it, though.
So worth it. And it was a very interesting, you know, Dan has never been a CTO before, but he's a phenomenal engineer. And I've never been a founder before. So we were just kind of like, so what do we do?
Hey, like maybe if you do this and I'll do this.
I'll do this. Yeah. I guess our real like first hire was because
the other Dan.
And this is an actually really interesting story when it comes to recruitment, because I started to set out to hire front end Dan. So we've got like CTO Dan, and then we've got front end Dan. Dan Beach is brilliant. If anyone tries to come and poach him, I will come for you.
Famous last words. You just said his name on something that's going on social media.
Yeah, sorry. We need to bleep that out. Bleep his name out. Dan is just an incredible front-end engineer, a delight to work with. Again, if you come for him, I will hunt you down.
I will come for you.
I will come for you. And we were looking for a front-end engineer. We decided we wanted to build in Flutter. We wanted to be able to build in parallel for iOS and Android. And Flutter gave us the flexibility to do that well. And as a language, it's one that's kind of becoming more popular now. Spotify have kind of moved over for their app recently, but a few other kind of larger tech businesses have as well. Google famously used quite a bit of Flutter. And so we thought it'll be a walk in the park. We'll be able to find someone. The other interesting caveat is we are remote first, but within the UK.
Oh, okay. Wait, what do you mean?
So what that means is we're a remote company,
right?
But you have to live in the UK.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
So you can work from like Liverpool.
Yeah,
you can work from Newcastle. You can work from Birmingham.
But as a startup, I think that should be really normal. And I don't mean this to get like not legal about it, but from a R&D perspective, from all of these different things, like you need to maximize on that. And if it means being in the UK, I think it.
Well, like VCs are always talking about market size, and it's like, why would you confine yourself to just everyone in London? Like, sure, there's 9 million people in London, but why not go big and go like the whole country?
And especially now that you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Because pre-COVID, that was not a thing.
It was frowned upon. It could be done. And honestly, when I worked at Klarna, our head office was in Stockholm. Most of our engineering was in Berlin. And then I was working on products for the US and the UK. So most of my time in the office was spent in a conference room on Google Meet anyway. Right? But that added an interesting, spanner into the mix. And we put out this Notion doc. Our JD was a Notion doc.
We love Notion here.
I love Notion. I love Notion. But it was like, forget about Lever or like Workday or whatever. It was like, here's a Notion doc. Like, it was
What's
like a
an
post-it.
ATS system?
It
Who
was like
needs it?
Truly a post-it note. Like, hey, we're hiring. We're just like, YOLO, maybe we'll find someone. And I kind of was like, I'm going to post on a few job boards. You know that diversity is very, very important to me. Yes. So I was like, I'm going to post it on like Ada's List job boards and try and find like female engineers, on a few others. There's a group called Pocket, people of color in tech. Put it there, like really tried to like widen the net. And then on LinkedIn.
How much fun did you have?
I mean, we were really just like, fuck it. Let's just see what happens. So posted this thing on Notion and got like no hits the first time. Like, oh my God, we're never going to find someone. I was, this is where startup life, you go from day one, you're like, this is going to end the business. And as you grow, the problems just become so different. Like I'm laughing now, but back then I was like terrified. Like, who's going to build this app?
Yeah.
We are
Because it's not me.
It's not me. So I posted on my personal one. Dan posted it on his personal one. Then we posted it on Bloom's. And then Dan used the hashtag for Flutter.
Okay.
And it just so happened that front end Dan was having a bad day at work.
Oh. Capitalizing on emotions. Do you use manipulation quite a bit in your recruitment tactic? Because it's really coming across.
It's coming across that I'm just manipulative as a person. No. So he was having a bad day and happened to log on to LinkedIn for the first time in months.
Who, you or Dan?
Front end Dan.
Front end Dan. Okay.
And happened to click on the hashtag for Flutter. And
very cool.
Our post came up. And so that's how he saw the JD.
Oh, amazing. That's a really good little tip. Like, use hashtags, because I genuinely wonder when I use hashtags, it just kind of goes into the ether. I was like, well, apparently I just look like a knob putting 25 different fucking hashtags.
Hashtag inspo.
Hashtag London recruitment jobs. It's just not.
Hashtag women in tech. Yes, exactly. And so it worked. Incidentally, we were also using a Google form to like track our hits. Because again, why use a CRM?
Workday.
Why use Workday? Why use Lever when you can just MacGyver a bunch of things together? Why would you do that? Why when it's
why
so
make
easy?
Your life easy?
Yeah, why? We can't play on easy mode forever. This is a startup life. Listen, free is best. Free is best. And so we interviewed a few people, and it was really interesting because most of the people applying didn't live in the UK. So it made it really easy for us to be like, sorry.
Yeah.
I have kind of grown up a bit and become more realistic, because I used to like personally write a note to every person.
Wow.
Like, clearly that's not scalable.
No.
So now we kind of have a template, but obviously the further down the funnel you get, the more personalized it will be, especially if it's down to like the last round.
Absolutely.
But we got really lucky. It was very serendipitous. And Dan is still with us. And Dan has been with us since, oh my gosh, over 2 years now. Which, like, in startup life,
fintech, that's
the turn.
That's high tenure.
Actually, everyone on the team, except for one engineer who only started like last autumn, has been with us for over a year.
That's
now.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Because one thing that we, like, you can just see this even on the LinkedIn stats where it says average tenure, and you can see some of these fintechs with like 6 months, 9 months. I'm like, oh my God, if you stop hiring wrong, you'll stop wasting so much money. Exactly. Like, it's,
well, and I think
painful.
This is something I never understood it. So in my master's degree, I took this organizational behavior class, and everyone joked it was really frou-frou, touchy-feely. And we talked a lot about company culture, and we talked about the hiring process and everything, internal labor markets, all this nerdy fun stuff. But one of the things that a lot of people didn't understand was like the value of culture and how your culture impacts even your hiring process, which in turn informs who you hire, which then further adds to your culture, which then adds to your retention rate of your employees. And
especially at that early age.
Yeah.
Like early stage.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah. And startups, I think, early on are thinking about getting their product out quickly, which they should, of course. But they're not really thinking about, how do I become a big kid company? That is something that people start to think of like Series A, B onwards.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, from day one, it was like, actually, I would like this to be a functioning company from day one.
Yeah. So have all your processes, everything in place.
Exactly.
As
and
early as you can.
Early on, it was like, thinking back, this is a process that worked for us. This didn't work. How do we improve it? Putting it in Notion, creating a process out of it.
Yeah.
Our ops manager, Asha, now absolutely smashes it. Like,
You've told me about your ops person. And I remember you
her.
telling me that she's come in and just saved you. Like, you just...
Well, she's the type of hire where you didn't know you needed her until you had her. And
Because you're, I remember this. Yeah. You said, no, I could do everything. And then she came in and did it for you. It's like, oh my God, is this what you do? This is amazing.
this is what you do? This is fantastic. And I'm over here like, great. Now I have like 6 other jobs to do.
Yeah.
But
I feel like
now
your job as a founder is just to slowly let go of
Correct.
all of the things that you've been doing.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. No, this is exactly it. And I think this is something that founders don't realize is like you go from day one doing everything.
Yeah.
And your job is to make yourself redundant.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or just focus on the thing that you know you can do or you're passionate about or you like, and then you can keep that for yourself, or just have the overall vision and just navigate that.
Exactly.
But yeah,
Steer the
I
ship.
can't. Exactly. I can't do tech. I can't code.
I'm not a
can't do-
marketer. Oh my God.
But we have to do it.
I'm over there like, how do I write copy for this? Like, hey, you download our
Sign
app.
up.
Download our app and make some transactions. Yay. Like, capital at risk. No. I'm like, come on. Like, clearly, I'm not a marketer. So if I can find
Registered
some...
by the FCA.
yeah. And here's all the small print. No, I get to nerd out about regulatory stuff and like talk
That's your
about
bag?
Oh God. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Well, moving on to the next question. I won't, because if I ask you about regulatory stuff, I'm just gonna be like, oh,
Okay, interesting. We'll go for a while there. Yeah. Got lots of thoughts.
right. What has your experience been with recruiters? Be brutally honest. I even texted you that.
You did. I will start by saying I have a lot of respect for recruiters because recruiters do a really hard job. So we were talking about dating, and recruiting is effectively matchmaking. And if you're doing your job well, a recruiter is like worth their weight in gold.
Yeah.
In my opinion. There is a reason why you've got, you know, the likes of Korn Ferry, you know, with executive search and whatever. Like, finding that right person is
Worth a shit ton.
worth a lot of money. It's worth it to find that needle in the haystack. Unfortunately,
I was waiting for this.
I'm just gonna unload here. Unfortunately, most of the recruiters that I have had the pleasure or not so pleasant experience of working with or speaking to are typically, I'm gonna be like brutal here, like Gaza down the pub, like lads, like lads, like, can I grab you a glass of cava? I'm gonna drink you under the table, and you're kind of like, whoa, I could smell that like Aqua di Gio coming off you. No, Jean-Paul Gaultier from like a mile away. Love the enthusiasm. Lots of energy.
Yeah.
Some of it synthetic, some of it real, whatever. Listen, you do you. You do what you need to do.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, it's a sales process as well, right? And I hate this term, but you eat what you kill. I feel in recruitment is my understanding. Right?
Yeah. Let me hear your piece.
Yeah.
Let me hear your piece.
Okay.
Because you're not wrong.
I think recruiters who are very young or just frankly not good at their job are very into spray and pray.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm just going to hit everyone up. Like every founder, depending on which side they're on, right? Every founder that's hiring or every Flutter engineer in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to like spam the shit out of them. Whereas...
Especially when the market is tough.
Oh,
and there's
yeah.
not enough to go around.
And we're all, like, honestly, we're all fighting for our lives right now. I am, you are. Listen, I have
We're
empathy.
in it.
We're in a tough place right now.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of empathy for that. However, there's a way to, I think, respectfully and considerately approach a founder that may or may not be hiring. I think a really good place to start is, like, don't cold call me, because now I'm wondering, where the did you get my phone number? Like, my mom calls this number. What do you do? My GP calls me about my pap smear results. Why are you calling my phone number right now? Where did you get this? I want to know.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
a very valid question.
And some people would say that's really impressive. Like, oh, look at, I'm really hustly and I found your phone number. Or like my personal email address.
No, I'm fucking scared.
No, I'm like, as a woman as well.
Yeah.
I'm concerned. I have had someone actually mail something to my house before. No. And it was like, haha, cute. And I was like, no,
It's not
stalker
cute.
behavior.
I have sent letters Never things. I've sent letters, but that's only because their office was like publicly put on the website.
No, but my home, my flat.
Oh, no.
My home, where I live, where my
Nina,
clothes live,
no.
where my 10-step skincare product lives.
Yeah,
No.
that's not okay.
No.
That's not okay.
And that's not on company's house, by the way. So don't be sending me mail there.
Yeah. I think I wish after all this time, we have such a terrible reputation that people straight away just get this feeling of, oh, they're a recruiter, they're going to try and sell to me, blah, blah, blah. So trying to get over that is difficult. Recruiters also don't help themselves. Because one way that you can actually advocate is by saying, hey, I don't just want to help you hire, but why don't we help you out for free with what you're doing in the next 6 months?
Yeah.
Like, do you actually know what you're looking for in a product manager? Because I do, because I've been doing it for 7 years. Maybe there's something I know that you don't. So advocating for their value in a different way than just saying, hey, let me make this placement for you.
It's
do you get what I mean?
Very, very transactional. And I think for some people that works. For me, it doesn't. I'm not
Exactly.
a one and done. I'm not a one night stand girl. I want to be wined.
Courted.
I want to be courted. I want flowers. I want you to write me poetry.
Just nothing to your house.
Don't I'm opening up a can of worms right now. I want you to write me poetry, not AI poetry. I want you to write me poetry. Well, not a recruiter, clearly. But like, what I mean by that is you're reaching out to me and you're going like, oh, I have a Rust engineer. I'm like, cool. We don't, like,
Great.
We're not looking for a Rust engineer. What? It's like the professional.
It's not making sense.
Well, and then people will also just like send you profiles that are like completely unrelated to what you're looking for in different geographies. And it's like an unwarranted dick pic. Like, I didn't ask for this.
We were doing a story earlier where someone was saying, oh, I received a job spec for a job. And then he goes, I'm the hiring manager for the job. Of course, like, excellent. You had one job. You literally had one thing to do, and you set it to the man that you're helping hire.
Yeah.
Like, please give up.
Just do a little bit of research as well. And I think that's something that I would love to see more of, which is, hey, it's not difficult. You look at my Instagram, you look at my LinkedIn, you look at my X Twitter account, like, it's pretty clear, raging feminist, like, care a lot about diversity.
You can build you can
get
build
a pretty good
picture.
idea of like what is going to speak to this woman, what is going to catch her attention, and it's not going to be sending me candidates that have experience that have nothing to do with what we're doing.
Yeah.
I have a lot of people in my inbox right now like pushing AI on me, like, oh, we've got an AI engineer.
Who said you're looking?
Well, yeah, and it's like, look at Bloom's social media. Listen to a podcast I've been on like 2x speed. I've never once mentioned
2x speed.
I've never once mentioned AI. In fact, like, we're very careful with how we even will implement AI into our roadmap, if at all, in the next year or so.
It's not as easy as just plugging into ChatGPT and thinking it's going to do the Lord's work for you.
Well, I mean...
Oh, is it?
Is it? Know. Perhaps we should find out. But, it's just like, just a little bit of thought and consideration would be nice.
Yeah.
What's her favorite color? Does she like flowers? Sunflowers. I love sunflowers.
Hence the...
Very, very bright.
It's very cute. No, that makes sense. Oh, this is purely because I'm very curious to know, and also maybe as advice for the future.
Tell me.
What was the funniest or most unusual thing that has ever happened during a pitch or meeting with investors? Or just words of wisdom?
Well, there's a lot of bad behavior.
Okay.
And I don't need to rehash that because we all know that there's bad behavior. I've been asked out on a date.
Oh, really? From like potential investors?
Yeah, and I'm like, that's not what we're here for. This coffee is not a date, sir. Excuse me.
Let me just call my mom real quick.
Like, Mom, I hate it here. Can you come pick me up?
Okay.
I think it's quite interesting sometimes to meet investors who clearly have not done their research on you.
Yeah.
And when I'm meeting an investor, by the way, like I'm not going stalker level where I'm going to show up at your house and hold the boombox over my head, but I'm going to know your thesis. I'm going to know where you worked before. I'm going to know if you speak other languages. And I was in this conversation with an investor who shall remain unnamed.
Absolutely.
And he clearly did not look at my CV or just go onto LinkedIn and just have a quick scroll.
Yeah.
Because on my LinkedIn, you would know that actually I studied War and Peace Studies with an emphasis on counterterrorism.
Oh.
And I worked for the US government. And I have an unhealthy obsession and interest in foreign policy and also military science.
That comes across on your Instagram, so that's okay.
Oh, good. That's delightful for everyone
I love it.
who follows me on Instagram. Hey, thanks for sticking around, everyone. Also a lot of dog content. But he said to me, listen, this sounds great. Do you have the killer instinct to build $1 billion business? And I kind of just sat back and like didn't, you know when you can feel yourself not blinking because your eyes are drying out? And all these thoughts were like whooshing around in my head. And I was like, does he know who he's talking to right now? And all I could think in my head is like, you know, I worked for the US government. Like, I studied war. Like, I wrote my thesis on modern warfare.
Yeah.
Like, guerrilla warfare. Do you have the killer instinct? And I just kind of stared at him. And it's a question that I've had lots of other female founders say. They've been asked. I've never met a male founder that's been asked that question before.
Really?
Yeah. I finally gathered myself and I said, I reject the premise of the question.
Oh, stunning. Stunning.
I am building $1 billion business, but I do not need a killer instinct
Damn.
to do so.
Straight.
But that was pretty bizarre. I mean, I'm building something for immigrant communities. And so I get a lot of like racist things. I get a lot of people who like don't know their geography clearly. Like, oh, like Nigeria's in Latin America. And I'm like, what?
I beg your finest pardon. Like,
Excuse
what?
me?
Yeah.
So, you get a lot of weird stuff.
But I do that part, that's just education, right? Like
Sure.
you educate them on the
Yeah.
product and that's fine.
Absolutely.
But it does sound like you have to, it's so underwhelming when you think you have a good conversation coming up or a coffee with someone who's going to take you seriously. And then, within 30 seconds, it's like, ugh.
Yeah.
Your heart just like sinks and it's like, you're not here to take me seriously at all.
Oh,
but I'm
you
still,
can tell.
yeah, you
can
can.
tell. Well, and I used to, early days, I would just push. Luckily, actually, a lot of these first calls are now done via Zoom or Google Meet. And I used to be like, just push through it. Get
Yeah.
through it, girl. And
Yeah, you still have to maintain all of your energy and being serious about it because you can't really afford not to.
Exactly. And the investor circle is quite small.
Yeah.
So people do talk. And I used to just be like, get through it. Like, come on, just push through it. It's like 14 more minutes. Just keep that smile plastered on your face. I now, and like gearing up to raise for a seed, have been a lot better about this where if I can tell someone is checked out,
Amazing.
or if they've not done their homework, or if it's just clearly not going to be a good fit, I just cut off the meeting. Oh, also, if you're late, if you're late to a call and you do not send me a text or an email to say, hey, running late, after 5 minutes, that's my cutoff now. If I really want to speak to you, I might leave it like to 6 minutes. But even then, 6 minutes in, I'm starting to go, why do you have no respect for my time? Cut off.
I remember someone telling me, and I stick to it even now, where they were like, if you're 5 minutes early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And if you're 5 minutes late, then that's it, you're gone. Like, goodbye. So I have anxiety about ever being late to things.
I am run on Global South time. I'm half Indian. We're late to everything. I don't want to generalize.
You're doing well. You're doing well.
I'm like fighting
every instinct.
I am fighting my genetics to show up on time, like early even. That's why I always have a book in my bag because I'm like, you know what? Just get there early and read. Like, it's not even worth it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyways.
This is just here for product placement. That's why.
I thought you said you were going to pretend that you were reading the questions off the card.
No, that never materialized, did it? As you can see, I've written the questions on my card.
On my card, aka phone.
If you could recruit anyone
Ooh!
from history or fiction to join Blue Money, Who would it be and why?
Right? Oh, wow.
I'm going to give you leeway. You can pick two.
That is so hard. Okay. So history is an interesting one because what we've built hasn't historically been done. So I'm going to leave history alone just to not overcrowd my head.
Okay.
But if anyone's watching this and they're like, missed a trick, girl, you should have hired Genghis Khan, like, please slide into my DMs. I can't wait to be educated. I'm thinking modern day, I'm thinking fiction.
Okay. I'm excited now.
So what I'm looking for a man in finance. No.
Trust fund. 6'5", blue eyes. Continue.
I'm always looking for people who have that spark to connect with people.
Okay.
Whether you're on our engineering team, whether you are on ops, whether you are a data scientist,
Okay.
and someone with like deep curiosity, and then someone who really like understands or can meld into the communities we serve, right? I think that's also why it's been really hard for me to hire, because I'm always trying to hire myself.
That's a very common thing for founders to do, though, early stage, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
And-
Because you
and-
only know about yourself.
Yeah,
From a
but that's why
personality
hiring
perspective.
Asha, our ops manager, was so difficult, because I had to like cut the ops part of me out,
Yeah.
and then be like, what does that look like in a job, and then hire for that.
Yeah.
And so actually, one of the jobs that I've really always wanted to fill and haven't done is a community manager.
Recruiters, that does not mean you can message Nina after this.
No,
with
I mean, like,
community
no,
management.
listen, if
or
you
maybe do it.
If you find a brilliant community manager, get
Let
in
Nina
touch.
know.
But what I'm looking for is someone who can go down to Peckham and like chat with the Nigerian aunties buying yams and mackerel at the market. I want this person to go to Southall and have cups of chai with the uncles that are running the convenience stores. I need someone who understands what it's like to kind of code switch, be in different communities, understands why culture and tradition are so important.
Yeah. Do you have those examples in your job spec? Because that would make a cool
I think
job spec.
I need to be more prescriptive, and that's a good lesson for me as a founder, is
Yeah.
oftentimes, like with engineering, it can be quite prescriptive because you're looking for a very specific thing. I think it's something when we look into other roles on like the non-engineering side of the business, whether it's compliance or ops or marketing, I'm going to start adding in.
Yeah.
Because that gives you a tangible, like even in some of our horror stories from getting appointed as a distributor of an e-money license with our compliance team, the reason we still work with them is because they get it.
Yeah.
And actually, like Andy from AuthorityPay, like he is Caribbean, like he comes from the community we're trying to serve, so he innately understood what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
His mum does Pardna, which is what like our core product is called. You know, she goes to church. He knows the aunties, and
That's so cool.
Yeah, I never said it out loud, but it helps, right?
Yeah.
And it would help to have that in a JD to kind of give an idea. This is not to say that people who don't know that can't learn.
No,
it
it's just
either.
being open, or it's wanting to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
well,
like-
hopefully if someone sees that in the JD and they go, oh, wow, like that's
Yeah.
me, exactly, then like they would apply.
So who would you put that in fiction terms?
Actually, my first thought, so there's two modern day people who come to mind. One
Okay.
is Barack Obama. Because, like, first of all, I'm in love with Barack Obama.
You've never not been in love with
No,
him as long
I've
as I've
never-
known you.
Never. And also in love with Michelle Obama. Separately, together, all of it.
Yeah.
And Barack Obama was not famously, because actually not many people know this, before he became a senator, he was a community organizer on the south side of Chicago. So when I worked on the Obama campaigns in 2012, we were given this thing called the Organizing for America handbook. It's still available online. It's a PDF, and it was the campaign's approach to consensus building to grassroots organizing to going into communities and building a wider sense of community around the candidate.
Yeah.
It is a playbook on building community.
Very cool.
And so Barack Obama, who is someone who is also very capable of code switching between
So easily.
different target audiences, and I do that day in and day out. The way I speak to an investor is very different to the way that I speak to the auntie in Peckham, right? And then the second person that immediately came to mind was Asma Khan. She is the head chef at Darjeeling Express. Currently,
I watched that episode. What show was that on? I can't remember.
so she was on Chef's Table.
That's the one. Yes.
On Netflix. And
Lawyer? She's
she's
not
a constitutional law expert.
That's the one. Yeah.
I think she's a doctorate in constitutional.
Her story is
Her
incredible.
brain is the size of a planet, right?
Yeah.
And started these separate clubs because she just really missed home.
It was dinner clubs, right?
Exactly,
She would
in her
invite-
own home.
Yeah.
And it was nostalgic food. It was food that reminded her of home. It was comfort food from India. And that turned into what is now Darjeeling Express. And I think the beautiful bits about Asma, and I've had the pleasure of meeting her several times now, she is an incredible storyteller. I aspire, so is Barack Obama, I aspire to that level of storytelling.
Yeah.
And if you ever get the chance to go to her biryani supper club, which are usually on Sundays, I think, go. People kind of go, oh, it's so expensive. I'm like, you wouldn't mind paying that much for like a Michelin star set menu.
But it's from what I've seen on the videos, it's like everyone gets involved.
Oh,
It's a community thing within the restaurant at that point.
And
in
you're also
time.
sent home with more biryani. So like you're getting 2 meals.
Very typical.
It's very, I think it's very worth it. I think it's bullshit that we don't think of global South cuisines as being fine dining or elevated dining. That's a separate conversation. But if you ever get the chance to go to one of her supper clubs, she walks you through the meal
Yeah.
and explains the importance of every single thing that's being put in front of you.
Which makes it taste better.
Yes.
People cannot say shit to me, but when someone is standing there and they tell me about the food, I am now emotionally involved
my
with
gosh.
whatever is on my plate.
Food, I actually was speaking to someone about this recently. Food touches every aspect of your life, from
That's
like
right.
birth to death.
Yeah.
And it is intensely personal and emotional, and we all need it to survive. And so telling that story through food, I think that's actually why Bloom's like events or when I meet people is often overlapping with food at food markets or over a cup of tea.
That's how we technically met.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's
on that dinner.
always over joining together over food, breaking bread. And she's so brilliant in telling the story around it. And I think she would be, she's just captivating. You know, she speaks and you're
lost in her words. You're lost in her story.
words. So I think those are the two that immediately come to mind. I'm going to have to go and think now about fictional characters because I'm sure there are brilliant fictional characters that would be great to have.
Well,
on
right now
roster.
with like the House of the Dragon and stuff coming up, I was trying to think, well, who would I want someone with a killer instinct?
Oh, gosh,
like Daemon Targaryen or something
exactly.
training Recfindr. But no, have a think about it and you
I'll have
can
a
let me
think.
know. But
Well, maybe Daenerys, you know, she's fierce, but like loves her people.
true. She's trying to break the wheel,
Break the wheel. Yeah.
blow some shit up.
While looking fantastic doing it.
Yeah, it's not a bad addition. Well, Nina, thank you so much
You're
for
most
joining
welcome.
me on a non-podcast
Non-podcast podcast.
podcast.
Thank
I'll see you
you.
soon.
I'll see you soon.